Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Cristina Cabrillo Santos, and I'm here today with Luna Fox. If you're new to my channel, please don't forget to click like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you know when the new video is coming out. They're not weekly at this point, so stay tuned for more. And for this session today, Luna is a special guest whom I actually met on social media, on Alignable. And we ended up really having a similar vibe, that energetic imprint that you can just feel even through the screen as we were writing to each other. And Luna Fox is a tarot reader and an EFT practitioner. And so I really wanted to bring her on to my channel and discuss more about how she incorporates EFT into tarot readings, what was her journey like, and she has an awesome background story that I think people of all sorts can really relate to. And with that said, let us begin. Luna, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, Christina. It's really an honor to be here. I appreciate you inviting me on today. So thank you very much.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you start with tarot? And then you can tell us how did you get into EFT? And then finally, combining the two modalities into one to help yourself and help others around you.
For sure, absolutely. Well, tarot and EFT both have been a huge part of my personal healing and transformation journey. I feel like I'm one of those people who's just gone through several lifetimes, within the time that I've been here on this planet. And early on, I was actually diagnosed with a mental illness, and I received the very traditional treatment, lots of medication, that kind of thing. And it just did not work for me at all. So in a lot of ways, I've always been drawn to the more holistic healing modalities, alternative therapies. I actually tried acupuncture, and I saw an acupuncturist back when I was in my late teens. I started with that. And that was kind of what opened the door to me for a lot of the more alternative healing modalities. And then I have just always been really drawn to, the witchy, kind of more fringe subject matters for sure. So tarot is something that I got interested in at a really young age. I don't even remember when I got my very first deck. It was probably in my teens. But I started really reading cards very seriously for myself in my late 20s, and at that point, I was starting, I was going through my Saturn return, lots of changes. I moved across the country, and checking in and having a daily tarot practice really helped me, it helped ground me. It helped me to think about things with a different perspective, you know what I mean? And then I slowly started to read cards for other people over the years. Now, EFT is something that I encountered a lot later. I would say, so I mentioned my history with mental illness. That started in my early teens. And then I went through a period of remission, real wellness and everything. And I hit, I went into a really deep depression back in 2016. And that is when I started tapping. And I just went full stop, and I hit a major 180. I just started doing everything totally differently to try to pull myself out of this really deep depression without the support of a psychiatrist, without any medication, without any of that at all. And I'm not giving any, I'm not a doctor, I'm not giving mental health advice. I'm not saying that anyone else should, try to do this on their own. You don't have to. And of course, like I received a lot of support from my friends and family, but what it really was meditation, self-love practices, and EFT tapping, and really just like journaling and confronting those things that were like those stories that I was telling myself of like, I'm messing everything up. I'm so depressed. Like, I'm not good enough. Like all of these things that were just cycling in my head, I started really looking at them and then flipping them and changing them. And yeah, within like 6 months, I was just on a completely different trajectory. And that was back in 2016. And since then, I have really felt called to share the story,
Yeah.
and help others do the same. And then the pandemic happened, obviously, we were all kind of sent back into our little like cocoons, or almost like there was a lot of space to really think about doing things a little differently. And that's when I decided, it was time to start doing this for other people. So I started an online tarot business you can find at lunafox.com. And I became an EFT certified practitioner this year.
Amazing. And you combine them both. And I had the pleasure of actually having a short session with you where you did both. And I think it's brilliant that you combine these two modalities because they feed each other. And what you mentioned to me prior to this conversation was that you can reveal more sometimes with people who may not be as open initially, right? So tell us a little bit about the experience of combining the two, and what even made you want to do that? Was it an intuitive thing, like you had an aha moment? How did that go about?
Honestly, I cannot like claim ownership for the idea myself. It is something that I learned from Gala Darling, who was like the an online influencer. She has her own YouTube channel, and like she used to do that. So when I was going through that really hard period, she was also, I don't think she was as experienced as a tarot reader, because it kind of seemed like she would pull cards and just like almost read a definition from the book. But she gave me this idea to sort of like build or like extract ideas for a tapping script from the themes that were coming through in the cards. And I feel like that is really helpful for people who, I sometimes say like I specialize in working with like introverts and like overachievers, people who are, either not super comfortable opening up to someone that they haven't really spoken to before. And sometimes when you're getting a tarot reading or any kind of energy healing, stuff comes out that maybe you haven't shared with anyone before. I know that that's happened with me and like other healers. And I want to make my clients feel as comfortable and safe as possible. So if you don't want to tell me all of the details about what's bothering you, or if something is a little bit too difficult or too painful to speak about, a lot of the times the energy that comes through in the cards and the symbolism in the images on the cards, it tells a story, right? Because the tarot cards, especially the major arcana cards, are like, they're the archetypes of these different milestones that we all go through in life. We have all moved through betrayal and heartbreak and these periods of like being on top of the mountain and victorious and having everything go right for us. So what comes up in the cards is what the person needs to hear, like always. And I kind of just like tune into my intuition. I'll talk to the person a little bit, and then I kind of just know what to say as far as like the EFT tapping. And sometimes we'll talk about it a little bit and really like narrow something down so that we can really like pinpoint exactly what that energetic blockage is. Because I know you're an acupuncturist, right? So you use really like fine needles to to break up the chi blockages along these energy meridians. And EFT is really similar. It's not as like in depth, right? You're just tapping with your fingertips, but you're also talking about it. You know what I mean? So you are marrying that like logical linguistic part of your mind with the energy that flows through your body. And I love the ability to do that. And I love that like tarot, like sometimes we can just tap on the theme that comes through the tarot cards. Like, like I mentioned before, sometimes you're telling yourself a really deep story, like I'm not enough, or like, maybe it's like I'm not worthy, or something like that can come through in the card, and we can tap on that, and you don't necessarily, or like the client rather doesn't necessarily have to actually come out and say that, right? Because I'm not going to sit across from someone I just met for the first time and be like, I just feel like I'm not enough. I always tell myself this, like, that's not going to happen. Or, sometimes the card that I pick is just like pure joy, and it's awesome. And it's just like, hey, like whatever you're doing, you're on the right track, right? So even though you're coming to me with some concern, it's time to trust that you're actually in the right place at the right time and doing the best you can. And that's all we need to do. And maybe that's just something that they really need to hear to kind of like tap in and calm their nervous system around, so that they can really see how wonderful they are and their life is, and how many blessings they have. Because that once you get into that state, then everything just becomes easier. It's almost like magic, but it's it's actually just life.
Absolutely. So there is a lot of that intuition, and I talk a lot about intuition. And even in Chinese medicine, we know all these systems. We went to school for many, many years to understand the workings of energy, of interactions of specific energies of certain organs, as well as channels themselves. But that intuition and intention with our patients and clients is really what moves the energy, right? Because sometimes you can go to 10, 20 treatments and things are just not moving. And it's because you may be working with a practitioner who is more checked out. Things are still going to shift. The needles will do their work on a nervous system level. You may feel more calm. But if the intention is not there, if the practitioner is not as intuitive with your vibration and what's coming up for you, then the healing may take a lot longer. And so even what you do with EFT, there is that intuitive aspect, right? There is the affirmation aspect, which I think words can be extremely powerful because words carry vibration as well. That's why we should be so mindful with how we talk to others and how we speak to ourselves internally as well. Like, how many times do people say, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Oh, I'm so dumb for doing that. And we constantly keep saying these things. And on a conscious level, we're not aware how it penetrates our life and why things happen sometimes, right? With like, oh, why did this happen? When internally, we have these dialogues that are so detrimental to our spiritual growth, our healing as well. Because a lot of us are just dealing with, even if it's minor health issues, most people have something that we need to work through. So it's really amazing that you're using tarot to bring up certain hidden occult things that maybe your clients don't tell you in advance. And then with EFT, you can work those out. So that's really lovely. And there's something special about your tarot deck. And I actually want to reverse a little bit back, because you did say something about the Saturn return, and that may not be as common knowledge to a lot of people.
Totally.
Right?
We can talk about that.
Talk a little bit about the Saturn return, and then tell us a little bit about different types of decks. I dabbled in tarot also when I was in my teenage years, but I really was more drawn to runes. I don't know if you're familiar with the rune system. So
I'm
that,
just learning about it now.
yeah, so runes really spoke to me. I loved pulling runes. But then a lot of people around me were into tarot and did tarot reading. And so I like to go to others for readings
Mm-hmm.
of that sort. So tell me a little bit about the Saturn return first.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's all about finding what really speaks to you and and going into that. And yeah, so the Saturn return is it's a term that we use in not we use. I'm not an astrologer,
Sure.
but I'm really interested in astrology and I listen to and read about astrology frequently. But I actually learned about the Saturn return when I was 29 and I was actually living in Brooklyn at the
Okay.
time. And I made a major move across the country to live in Washington on an organic vegetable farm. And it was just very severe, like dramatic,
Wow.
big change in my life. And when I got there, like the head farmer was like, "Oh, you're going through your Saturn return." And that is basically, I guess it's when like Saturn comes back to the same place in your that it was when you were born
In your
in the
chart, in your
sky.
natal chart.
Yes. And
Mhm.
I think that that happens between like 28 and 30 years or something like
Okay.
that. So, and if you think about it, like that's really the time in people's lives when they're just like, okay, very depending on what path you're on, you maybe are like, all right, this career that I went to college for and I thought was like what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, it doesn't really satisfy me. So I'm going to do something dramatically different. So I was definitely asking myself some of those kinds of questions, like what do I actually want to be doing for the rest of my life? Where do I want to be? And oddly enough, this tarot deck that I have is, I'm going to just show you one card. That is Justice. It's just the card that I pulled up. And it has an herb on it, plantain. Plantain is actually a really common plant to find on the ground. It's also like a really powerful healer. You could chew the leaves and use them as a poultice. But I got this deck at a witchy shop in, I think, the Lower East Side. And I just kind of like walked in, and it's not the traditional Rider-Waite deck. It's called the Herbal Tarot. And I think just like the woman that was working there was like, here, I feel like this one's right for you or something like that. And this is actually my second one because the first deck got lost in a move somewhere and I've since replaced it. So I wouldn't say I'm really an authority on like how to choose like your own tarot deck. But I am definitely a plant person. And I learned that about myself when I just made this seemingly really impulsive decision to move across the country and learn how to grow vegetables, which I'd never done in my life.
Wow.
My background is in neuroscience.
Wow.
So this is just like a very, very big shift. And I was just like, well, I'm going to go learn to grow food and work as a farmer. Totally different. But I also learned to connect with like the energies of plants. And I just have this innate calling to do that. Like I just this year started learning to make flower essences. And I didn't even know that that was a thing, but I can like sit among a field of like a certain type of plant and just sit with that plant and kind of almost sense their energy, you know what I mean? And just kind of like meditate there. And I can feel a lot of energy opening up. So I would say that like this deck is the one that I use the most. I have several.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm just drawn to the artwork.
Yeah.
And I mean, the most recent deck I bought for myself, I thought I was going to love it. And I keep pulling cards and I'm just like, I'm not connecting to this deck right now. So I don't use that one for clients.
Can I say something to that?
Yeah.
Because this is so funny that you just said that sometimes they just don't speak to you. Really lovely friend of mine who I also met online through a mentorship that I did, a functional medicine mentorship. And she lives in Vancouver. And the other day she posted how she's giving away a deck of cards that she got for herself. And her intuition was telling her when she was looking at the deck, like, okay, it's unusual. There's something about it that is not really like for me, but she got it anyway. And then she drew a card and when she got home, and still it just wasn't speaking to her. And so, yeah, there's that intuition within us that we all need to harness more, that can let you know, yeah, that is the right deck for you. Or a book. Sometimes we're drawn to books. We have no idea why. It's that intuition, inner calling telling you, like, you need to read this. So yeah,
For
that's
sure.
awesome that you discovered that about yourself in the plant life.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's another thing where like I found myself just meeting people who would be talking to me for less than 5 minutes and then tell me like, you're a plant person.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I don't know what that even means. And it's really interesting because now like my husband and I own a farm. So
there you go. Wow, what a change. So
there's a reason for it.
yeah, so that Saturn return, and I am not, I mean, I use astrology seldomly, and I've had my natal chart read, and I try not to use too many tools outside of myself.
Yeah.
Outside of myself. And when I work with others, if tools are necessary, we'll introduce them. But really going inwards and tuning in to find the way is what I like to do. But there is definitely so many benefits when we're using other tools that may seem external, as long as we're tapping into that higher self, divine essence that we're all coming from in the first place, that can allow us to interpret some of the signs that maybe without the external tools, it would take us 10 years, 20 years to get there. So for that reason, I think benefits are really great when using these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I'm with you. I don't really like to pour too much of myself into like any one thing. Especially with astrology, there are a lot of times when I listen to my horoscope for the week and I'm just like, that doesn't resonate at all.
Right?
Like,
Exactly.
I don't know where that came from.
Exactly.
But yeah, totally. Like a lot of what I do is exactly that. It's kind of like helping whoever I'm working with really tune into their own intuition and like and really trust it. There's so many times people will ask me like, how do you know what to say, or how did you know that? Or even if we're going through a guided EFT tapping session, like really frequently they'll be like, how did you know that? Or like, how do you know what to say? And I kind of just like tune into my intuition. I tune into the client as much as possible. And I kind of just like let it go, stream of consciousness sort of thing, using the tarot cards as a guide. I was thinking before how like when I would get acupuncture treatments, my acupuncturist would like take my pulses. I'm not sure if that's something that you guys
part of
do.
diagnostics. Yeah.
Right. So she would take some time and just close her eyes and rest her hand on my wrist and like really listen to my body. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm doing when I shuffle and I read the tarot card and I'm sitting in front of a client and I'm just like, okay, what's going on here? What needs to come up?
Yeah.
And sometimes they will tell me like directly what's on their mind. Sometimes people don't say anything at all. And sometimes I get a little freaked out by that. Like if the client like says nothing.
Yeah.
But even in those situations, I'll get a follow-up email like 2 hours later, like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. Like, but they just didn't feel comfortable, like really talking about it for whatever reason, but they still got to experience that healing. So
yeah,
that's why I really like to use the cards.
That's awesome. And so what does a typical session for you look like? And is it usually an hour? Is it half an hour? Is it longer? Is it less? Do you need to do follow-up sessions? how, or because in my work, for instance, I know that I could sit with someone and just have one session and it's enough for them. They don't need to come for a follow-up. When we're working obviously with like orthopedic treatments, pain management, stuff like that, then it's obviously a series of treatments.
Yeah.
But how do you incorporate what you do? And yeah, like I asked, how does it look like?
It could be a 30-minute session. It could be a 60-minute session. And then I offer both. So it's kind of just up to the person, you know, what's the depth of your question? Is it kind of like you're trying to get clarity on something that you feel like you already have a lot of information about, or are you just feeling really confused? And I also offer like ongoing coaching, sort of. It's not really coaching because I'm not like, okay, let's help you achieve your goal and like break it down this way. Not like that, but I'm sure that you've heard that like healing is like peeling away the layers of an onion, right? And there are times when someone comes to me with like a very, I want to say like superficial issue, you know, they're like, this really bothers me. And I'm just like, but there's something deep beneath that, that you're not ready to even maybe face right now. So in those kinds of situations, I feel like major transformation can really benefit from ongoing sessions in like a 6-week period.
Yeah. Okay. So you offer those as well, right? On your website, I saw you have several different tracks in a way.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I started with email tarot readings. And that is a little bit different. That would be like, if you don't have a question, the email tarot readings I do, they forecast like the next year of your life. So they're really popular around the end of the year, or for people's birthdays, you know? And in that case, it's like, you don't necessarily need to have like an issue that you're focusing on if you just kind of want some, you know, some insight on what might be coming up in your spiritual life, your relationships, finances, and things like that. So that's a little bit different. And then my 6-week Excavate and Activate program is really for someone who, like I just described, is like almost feeling like uncomfortable in the life that they've created for themselves, and they're not sure how to break out of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I also want to make an emphasis, because sometimes we talk about these topics of intuition and using certain tools they maybe look external tools. But you mentioned neuroscience, and I love neuroscience. I don't have a background in neuroscience, but because of my acupuncture and Chinese medicine, I delved a lot into that field, and the field of epigenetics as well, and the DNA health. All of that is very, very dear to my heart. And so I just wanted to mention that a little bit, because I don't want people to have a misconception that all of this stuff, as some might say, is too out there, too esoteric, too woo, or whatever, because we do have science background. We do have other, expertise under our belt. And then something in your life just calls you to these deeper currents than what traditional education offers, what college education offers, and things that are not taught in regular schools.
Yeah.
So can you tell people a little bit about that neuroscience? And
I would love to.
Yeah,
totally. I just want to say that like the mind-body connection is something that has always interested me. You know, when I was in college, it was like health psychology, I think, or biopsychology was what my concentration was in. And I was so interested in the link between psychosocial stress and your immune system. You know, how like being stressed out actually like physically makes you ill, like it weakens your immune system. So that's kind of where this all started. Also in college, I got interested in research with the EEG lab, which is electroencephalography. recording brainwaves of
Yeah.
people. And from there, I got a job at Princeton University running their EEG lab. And one of the first projects that I got into was working with meditators, like Tibetan Buddhist monk meditators, and examining their brainwaves compared to people who don't meditate. So there's already like that kind of introduction, that overlap of science and spirituality, right? Because our brains don't exist like in a robot. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but like I grew up in that time, and there was like that bad guy, that brain who like drove around in a little machine. And I feel like sometimes that's how people think of their minds, but your mind is a part of your body. And, you know, your body and your mind go together. One influences the other. And that's why something like acupuncture can, you know, help with you clear emotions. Or, you know, I was just talking to someone recently about how like reflexology, like pressing on your feet or your hands, can, you know, influence like your spine and back pain. And of course it does, because you have all of these nerve endings, and your nervous system is connected with your brain and your spinal cord, and it's how you process all of your information, you know, and like all of our experiences, all of our emotions are stored in our bodies. So when we want to, you know, treat our depression or anxiety or stress or something like that, it's not only about like dealing up here, you know, we really need to move into the body. And I think that acupuncture, I think that EFT tapping, really any kind of like yoga, like any sort of practice that really marries the body and the mind, and it helps you heal both together, that is awesome. That's where it's at.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think people will appreciate that a lot. And so finally, people can find you on lunafox.com, right?
Yes.
And I'll put that in the notes below the video. Is there anything else you would like to share with people who may be hesitant to try tarot and EFT, or you know, anything else you'd like to share before we finish the interview?
Well, I mean, if you're feeling called in any way to try this, but you're not so sure, if you go to lunafox.com/freedom, you can sign up for, you know, I'm going to ask you to sign up for my email list, but I don't sell your personal information, and you can unsubscribe at any time. And when you do that, you will receive a link to schedule a complimentary 20-minute session with me. So if it's something that you're interested in or curious about, or if there's anything in your body that is telling you that this might be a good idea, go ahead and do that. It is a limited time offer. It's not going to be up forever. So if you're feeling that pull, go for it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Luna, for your time, for sharing your knowledge with people, and really your personal experience, because for a lot of us, we've gone through so much, and these journeys are what finally allowed us to want to work deeper on ourselves. And I think a lot of the ailments in our physical vessel are there to kind of guide us back, that we've moved away from our true essence. So I don't see disease and illness as a end all, even if, you know, sometimes diseases are terminal. However, I do really believe strongly, and from my Chinese medical background as well, that there's a reason for all of it. And that is to really dig deep and reconnect to our true self again.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome, Luna. Again, thank you so much. And I hope to see you again soon. All right. Everyone, have a great day. And please, if you'd like this talk, share it with your friends and family. Spread the word so we can bring more of this type of material to you. I bid you all farewell. And again, click like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Bye. Mwah.